Thank you very much. A big hand for all our speakers this morning. Thank you very much for your insightful remarks. And now we move to our next session, the panels. So our first panel session is the session on promoting Africa's special economic zones, a journey towards green growth and innovation. Our esteemed panelists will discuss strategies for enhancing investment, building local capabilities, and creating sustainable jobs in Africa's renewable energy sector. This session will be moderated by Mr. Yofi Grant, the CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Center. Please join me in welcoming our moderator and our panelists, Ms. Oluranti Doherty, Managing Director, Export Development at Afreximbank. Mr. Hao Ren, Group Senior VP and Global COO of NWTN. Mr. Nassim Oulmane, Acting Director, Climate, Food, Security and Natural Resources Division, UN Economic Commission for Africa. And Mr. Tijani Nwadei, Partner and Co-Founder of Viisaus. Let's give him a warm hand.
First of all, thank you for your country. I hope we are all awake. After many speeches, people sometimes drift off. So to show that we're all awake, please wave your right hand. I'm not seeing many hands. Please. Okay. I think I have a very interesting percent under the age of 35. A huge youth dividend, which is a major consuming class for the future. Last but not the least, 65% of the world's remaining arable land left in the world is on the African continent. So that makes the African continent extremely important in the global dynamic. But as a continent that offers such great opportunity, isn't it amazing that despite all these, every year, or at least in the last year, Africa's share of global FDI, which the Secretary General just mentioned is critical for sustainable trade, is only 3%. It tells us there's something amiss. So today, to help us answer some of these very important questions and, filter through why we are where we are and what can overcome these barriers that we haven't yet discussed, I have 4 very interesting panelists, and I've mentioned their names, not in order of which they are sitting, but as they speak, we have Ms. Oluranti Doherty, Managing Director, Export Development at Afreximbank. Next to her, we have Mr. Hao Ren. He's a Group Senior VP and Global CEO of NWTN, which is a NASDAQ-quoted company. And then, of course, we have Mr. Nassim Oulmane, Acting Director, Climate, Food Security and Natural Resources Division of the UNECA, UNECA, as we call them. And then last but not the least, an accomplished entrepreneur, Mr. Tijani Nwadei, the partner and co-founder of, I always struggle to pronounce your company, is it Viisaus or Viisaus?
Viisaus, like tomato sauce.
So there we are. So this afternoon, I have for you some provocative questions. And I'll start perhaps with Mr. Nwadei, only because he's an entrepreneur who has risked his capital on the continent and is doing some amazing things in the green space. So Tijani, the first question, and I have 2 rounds of questions, is seeing that most African countries have government as a very large part of their economies and are politically set up to have huge concentrations of power at the center. What role do you think state governments play or should play in the promotion and the development of special economic zones as a vehicle to mobilizing green finance to the continent?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much, Afrexim and the Dubai Consulting Group for putting this together. Thank you very much, Baku. Thank you for the... it's very interesting. So I find that with people in this room, people from the banking sector, people from NASDAQ, think tanks, and those policymakers, their mandates and their drive is usually at variance with that of governments, whereas governments shoulders the burden of the policy that allows them operate. So I think with regards to Africa and regards to the government in Africa, the real role they play is around policy. Now, not policy in the same way that the people in this room will do policy, but policy in a way that allows the people in this room execute in their country. Government has the burden of the biggest infrastructure budget of any country. So by putting the policies in place that allow people in this room, your Afreximbanks, your private sector invest, it eases the way in which they do what they need to do. And the policy doesn't have to be grand. It can even be as small as electricity policy that allows special economic zones work. It can be transport policy that requires that government do a single road to promote exports. We've seen something in Ethiopia recently, the Hawassa Industrial Park, where they used a single policy that ensured that there was no liquid water discharge. It was reused in their process. That is green. That is impressive. And it was simply a line by government that ensured that that worked. So for government, I think it's simply policy and data. And with that, the rest follows. Thank you.
Okay, just one quick question after that. And it's a yes or no answer. Do you think African governments are doing enough to align SEZs in a way that they have sustainable trade and sustainable finance?
I think another way of looking at it is, do governments in Africa understand the alignment between SEZs and their political capital?
Right.
So you see, the people in this room trade in returns, whether it is financial returns or policy returns. African governments trade in political capital. So have they been sufficiently informed on the alignment of their political capital with the effective operations of SEZs? And I think the answer is no, but therein lies the opportunity. Like you said, you listed out a long list of potentials. All that potential is simply waiting for an alignment, and then there will be takeoff.
Thank you very much. Interesting answers. So I come to you, Nassim, because you work with UNECA. From UNECA's perspective, how do special economic zones align with Africa's broader climate and sustainability development goals, particularly in terms of fostering green technologies and reducing carbon emissions? And what policy frameworks of international partnerships are needed to support this alignment? And the last question I'm asking, because of what Tijani just said, that, there are different directions, but is it possible that international partnerships can be a solution to getting the SEZs to align?
Thank you very much, Yofi, for the question. I would like first to thank the organizers, DCG, UAE Trade Center, and Afreximbank for the invitation. And as you have highlighted it in your introductory remarks, I mean, maybe Africa is the only continent who is facing two major challenges. I mean, the climate change challenge, but also challenges related to the demographic dynamics. It has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. So, special economic zones, we see it from as zones that could play a crucial role in aligning Africa economic growth, because we need growth. Why we are 1.4 billion, moving to 2.6 billion, with its climate and sustainable development objectives. So, special economic zones are positioned to foster green technologies, very important, and to reduce carbon emissions by providing dedicated spaces where renewable energies, infrastructures, sustainable manufacturing, all these are related also to SDGs, and most than anything, innovation in clean technologies. This is really the priority. So how we align all these, and we see SEZs really as a tool to maximize this alignment. How you achieve this to, I would say, a policy framework that has several dimensions. First dimension, really create incentives, tax, or supporting industries. So having policies that will incentivize green investments, such as tax breaks for renewable energy projects, etc., to really having sustainable infrastructure standards. So standardization is crucial, particularly to respond to your point where, and as it has been highlighted by the first intervener, on how we can achieve this at the continental level in a coherent way. Wamkele Mene highlighted the potential that we have with the AFCFTA. So really the coherence of the approach across the continent is also fundamental. And finally, and most important also than ever, because it's related to innovation, skills. So skills development, knowledge sharing between the different part of the continent, between the different SEZs. And the example, and it has been given by in her introduction by Ms. Kanyana Awani on the DRC Zambia Special Economic Zone, really bringing all this together to bringing countries to develop together special economic zones is also very important. Why? Because we need to recognize in our continent that we have several countries that are suffering from the size. So building together SEZs to make the most from the African regional AFCFTA, developing regional value chains, is really an important point. So let's see how we can make sure that our countries, they of course develop SEZs, but also they see how together they can develop this SEZ. I will stop there.
Thank you. Interesting. So I come to you, Oluranti, because you have been thrown a challenge, in a backwards way. So in your opinion, since you're running export development at the AFDB, Afrexim, same difference. How can Africa actually develop sustainable manufacturing? You've had policy challenges, you've had divergent policies. How can Africa develop sustainable manufacturing capacities using the special economic zones, recognizing the challenges that have just been mentioned? What specific policies do you think governments should be adopting? What incentive structures should they be looking at, especially at this time when government revenues have all been shrunken on the continent? And what measures do you think they need to use to attract investment? And you heard the Secretary General say investment. And how do we promote sustainable industrialization?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you all, and a pleasure to speak on something that I'm very passionate about. And we're talking about special economic zones. At Afreximbank, we believe that special economic zones are really innovative tools that the continent can use to expedite sustainable manufacturing capacities. We've had all speakers mentioned today, from my Executive Vice President, Mrs. Awani, the SG Wamkele Mene, that Africa is a continent that is rich in various resources. You yourself, Moderator, you alluded to that. However, very little transformation goes on the continent. And this is because of the challenges we face in terms of infrastructure, in terms of trade-enabling infrastructure that even moves these goods, in terms of energy deficiency, etc. So we believe that establishing special economic zones can help reverse this trend. What do special economic zones do? Essentially, they are clusters where you promote transformation They are an integrated ecosystem, and they ensure a plug and play for manufacturers. And for us at Afreximbank, we've been pushing setting up industrialized parks and special economic zones under our 6th strategic plan in support of our 2 key core pillars, the pillar promoting intra-African trade and facilitating the implementation of AfCFTA, as well as the industrialization and export development pillar. And up to date, Afreximbank has been able to approve over 2.4 billion in financing to support the development of industrial parks. Of this, about 1.4 billion has actually been disbursed to facilitate inside the fence and outside the fence infrastructure in operational industrial parks in Gabon, in Benin, in Togo, and in Chad. Whilst we are currently advancing pipeline deals of over 2 billion to support the development of industrial parks in Cote d'Ivoire, Malawi, Botswana, Kenya, DRC, Zambia, Rwanda, and Nigeria. Why are we doing this? We want to foster a very swift transformation of the continent. And in the industrial parks that I've just mentioned to you that we financed in Gabon, in Togo, in Benin, and in Chad, we are already pushing and driving into African trade. I'll give you an example. The industrial park in Gabon produces wood products, and the industrial park in Chad produces meat products. Between these 2 countries, we have been seeing an export of wood that is deficient in Chad to Chad, and an importation of meat from Chad to Gabon. Whereas before, Gabon was importing meat from South America. So these are some of the changes we've made. But what do we think is required from governments to ensure that special economic zones become an attractive destination for investors that are here with us today? I see a lot of Azerbaijani investors and also people from everywhere in the world. We invite you to come to Africa and invest in our special economic zones. And some of the things we've done with our member countries in some of our operational economic zones is that we've ensured that they've put in place appropriate tax incentives and benefits, tax holidays of 10 years and above to attract investors like yourselves. We've also worked with them to ensure that they streamline regulatory processes so that when you want to set up your companies in those companies, it's streamlined. It's a one-stop shop. You don't go from one place to the other for days and months. This process is streamlined. Another thing that our special economic zones have done to be attractive is to ensure that operating cost is kept minimal. How do they do this? They have created an integrated ecosystem to bring the raw materials required for production to these zones. They have also created an integrated ecosystem to get finished goods out of these industrial parks to destination markets across the world. Another thing that we've done very well in the industrial parks and special economic zones that we finance as an institution is we've ensured the creation of vocational training centers to train skilled workforce. So Africa has a teeming youth population, and this is some of the things we are harnessing and utilizing within these industrial parks. We ensure that the operational industrial parks in Gabon, Benin, Togo, and Chad host vocational training centers to train the youth to be able to work in these industrial parks. Another thing we've been able to do is to ensure market access and trade facilitation. And this is one of the things I'm doing as I am sitting on this panel. I'm talking to you about these operational industrial parks in Gabon, in Benin, in Togo, and I'm inviting you to come with us to be able to set up your factories, your companies in these industrial parks. You have access to raw materials, you have better labor costs, you have infrastructure, you have access to destination markets. And the last thing is we've worked with these countries to make them see that their role in the development of industrial parks goes beyond just providing land and incentives, but joining in investment and export promotion and marketing. As Afreximbank, we don't just do financing. We do finance, we do advisory, we do advocacy, and we do investment promotion and market access for most of these projects that we support. Thank you.
Fantastic. So you know where to go when you're looking for a partner that's continent-wide. But how? You run a company that has globally done stuff, it's done stuff globally, and very well too. You are quoted on the NASDAQ, means you must be a heavyweight. And you've been at the forefront of green technologies and innovation in many markets. What do you think, in your view, is the problem that Africa will face in trying to attract green finance or trying to develop green technologies on the continent? And do you think the special economic zones that she's very well expressed are a one-stop shop to support some of these developments? And then, of course, do you think the continent itself, with all the challenges it has, should be looking at green finance or be looking at solving its fundamental problems? Or is there a connection between the fundamental problems and green finance? I know it's a difficult question. It's like back to school, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think when you start this panel, all your comments sounds very familiar to me and sounds very exciting, okay? It just reminds me of China about 30 to 40 years ago, okay? We lack of infrastructure, we lack of market, we lack of GDP in China. Everybody is riding a bicycle instead of automotive. Everybody is, the net income is at hundreds of US dollars instead of over 10,000 now. And the government determined to develop those special economic zones in China, very similar approach as what Africa is doing today, okay? Even with all those challenges, we don't have work skills, we don't have workforce, we don't have income, we don't have the customer base or purchasing power. Nonetheless, when the government give all these incentives through the policies, the whole set of policies to advocate the economic growth, to set up special zones, these special economic zones with the incentives to attract foreign investment, to attract the foreign technologies, and also work with the local partners in the continent, not only just taking what's already existing there, put into Africa, rather you can use in those technology base to develop some products and service tailor-made for the continents, for the customer, for the people in Africa, which will help the economy to grow that unprecedentedly that you would think about it. Okay, I had a very interesting discussion before the lunch with the Africa Import and Export Bank, and we're talking about, my years back 30 years ago, when General Motors go into China and trying to set up joint venture, and we're looking at the market. To a certain extent, we found that the automobiles in US does not fit all the needs in China. Okay, you bring a Cadillac, you bring a Buick, you bring a Chevrolet, but still there's a large portion of the customer base or the price range you never covered. So we work with a very interesting local partner called Oulmane. If anybody knows that Oulmane used to be, they're like roll off every vehicle in 5 seconds, and they are building like 2 million units a year. We never expect that, okay? When we have a joint venture between General Motors and Shanghai Auto and the local partner in one of the rural area in China called Guangxi, and it's a city called Liuzhou, they only produced 100,000 units a year. And in 20 years, that company grows 20 times from 100,000 to a 2 million units a year annual output. That's very amazing. Okay, you never thought about when you start your business case, okay, the P&L analysis, your return on investment, you never thought about it. Okay, it is all these policies that government promote the industry and all these incentives you give into on the tax reduction, tax rebate, you're supporting with the skilled workforce education of the whole university systems to push the automotive industry developed. And also, I think for the special economic zone, not only the car itself is a huge revenue, but however, the value chain of the whole automotive industry will bring you components, and bring you all these new technologies that will help you to overcome those challenges you mentioned. For example, we're talking about like for the electric vehicle. Today, there's no infrastructure of charging. Okay, the power grid has not expanded to every corner that you can do, but technology is there. I used to run a startup in China, which has a charging pile technology together developed with Volkswagen. It's a power. It's a combination of a power bank with batteries and the fast charging guns. So when you have batteries, you don't need a big transformer, big cables from the power grid. You can charge these batteries at a normal rate, and then these mobile systems can be put inside all the rural areas and providing fast charging service to all the electrical vehicles. So technology will enable you to overcome some of the challenges. The same for Africa is, I think, by government, by the special economic zone, by those enterprises all together, we bring all these new technologies, new companies, and all these new products into the continent, and the whole value chain will help the economy to grow. So don't worry about too much. We've seen that 40 years ago in China, and everybody knows where China is today. So I believe in Africa, there's great potential. Okay.
Great. So let's do another round of questions quickly. And I'll start with you, Hao Ren. And I'll ask you a simple question.
Okay.
So if you look at the needs of the African continent today, you've seen China, you were a startup, you ran a startup yourself. Where do you think are the most attractive places for innovation and green technologies and the investment in green technologies and innovation on the African continent?
You're talking about the specific geographic location, or you're talking about the products or technologies? Technologies?
Either way you can answer, because either way works. Both?
Yeah. Both, yeah. I think, we have population, we have the market potential, we have young generations, and new cars, new energies, green technology, green energy, those are the way to go. China used to be, overwhelmed by the oil consumption because of the whole country's consumption. But today we're transforming to more clean, more sustainable green energies. And I think that's the same thing every continent, Europe, US, China. Now Africa should get all the lessons, and we go directly to the green products, green technologies.
Okay, great. So, Tijani, you just heard him. Is that where you put your money?
For me?
No, him. He has a fund. Yeah. So I'm asking, is that where you put your money?
Well, so generally, I think that the advantage of being in a disadvantaged position is that you get to be a market disruptor, right? So I think things like transportation, absolutely. I would not touch agriculture, because I think when you are blessed with so much arable land, there is less of an incentive for you to disrupt when it comes to agriculture. But anything that makes life easy, transportation, tech, even the way we handle waste tech, waste management, a lot of cities in Africa were not properly planned. So the planning came afterwards. So I think that there is a lot of disruption that can go in how you manage waste in a green and sustainable way. So yeah, I agree with you. But again, as an entrepreneur, disruption on the continent to catch up is where I'm putting my money.
Well, it's estimated that for AfCFTA to be functionally dynamic, Africa requires 2 million trucks. Will you invest in that?
So again, disruption. So AfCFTA assumes that we need to move things on the road. But today they are telling you that China is overtaking the US with taxis. Like, we don't have any ocean marine movement on the continent. See, if you tell me today, put methanol ships. So if I can get methanol cheap from the available gas on the continent, I will disrupt that way before I disrupt with trucks. You see, with trucks, I need too many people to agree to build a road. But I don't need anybody to agree to build the ocean.
Interesting. That's a very good answer. So I come to you. What would you advise governments to do in the light of what he's just said and what Mr. Ren just said? Because you engage government.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, it's related to what you have described perfectly. It's the demographic dynamics and having the inclusivity. It's, of course, from the UN, so it's a word that we push. But in the case of Africa, it's even more important than in the rest of the continent. So having a really local approach and to involve the local communities, find ways to innovate, have local innovations, etc. So this is really crucial when we speak about special economic zones, to make sure that the local communities around these zones are involved. How? We'd really give preference to local content policies, giving preferences to the communities, to the local suppliers. Easy to do. Building the skills around I was quoting the DRC Zambia special economic zone that we are working with Afreximbank on that. Really, the skills dimension is crucial. With the local universities to develop the local skills to do it. Innovation hub and incubators, really to setting up green technologies. You need incubators around this within the special economic zones and around. So to encourage the local innovation. And then making sure that the local communities are fully involved, fully engaged in the planning from the first stage when you start to plan, to really have the local communities involved in that stage. As ECA, as a regional commission, what is our role there, of course, is to work with the right partners to accelerate, is also to share knowledge from a region to another region, really hold, particularly on this issue of the local communities, really how to share quickly, but of course, to adapt to the singularity of a specific sub-region or country, or when two countries are working. And last but not least, work with the Pan-African institutions on the continental harmonization, so to make sure that the scale issue is also taken into account. So whatever you invest in that specific area with the specific local communities, you had at the end of the day as a target the continental market.
Okay, so we are almost wrapping up. I have one last question, which of course I'll direct to our only lady on the panel. So you've heard the three men speak. So as I would call you a development finance institution, would you rather put money in the likes of Tijani, or would you direct money to the many SMEs and SMIs who are in this space? And which do you think would be the faster route for Africa to grow?
Oh, it's back. Yeah, I think it's back. So for me, I think none is exclusive. I would invest in Tijani. I will also invest in the SMEs. Because you need to do both. Because where we are, we need to scale up and scale up fast. So you cannot afford to exclude one group at the expense of the other. But then you asked me a question, what is my role as a DFI? You see, I believe that African DFIs, we need to wear a different cap. We need to see ourselves beyond financing. And that is one good thing my organization has done. We don't see ourselves as a bank or banker or providing financing. We see ourselves as wearing multiple hats. Ourselves as an advocate. Thank you. Yeah. So we see ourselves as an advocate for our member countries. We see ourselves as an advisor to our member countries, so we provide advisory services. We see ourselves as developers. So you see us in some instance playing the role of project developers, and that's what we're doing in partnership with UNECA on the DRC Zambia Special Economic Zone project. We see ourselves as being catalytic, providing project preparation financing to project sponsors to be able to come up with bankable projects to attract debt and equity. We see ourselves as conveners. We convene people together. We bring the government, we bring the private sector, we bring international stakeholders, and we let each party play the best role they are most suited for. Just to conclude, we see ourselves as innovators. We definitely always come up with financing solutions. And one of these was alluded to by my executive vice president when she was talking about the Afreximbank guarantees product, which is available to you investors in the room today, thinking and pondering about how to invest in Africa and how to safeguard your investments. We have a suite of guarantee programs that we can offer to you to safeguard your investment. Either it's sovereign investment guarantee or it's investment guarantee tailored to transactions, credit risk investment guarantees. We have this product at your disposal to attract investments. And then finally, I would say we see ourselves as the bridge between the continent and the rest of the world. And we have created multiple platforms, be it our facilitation programs, be it the brick and mortar infrastructure we've created by financing development of special economic zones to attract you to the continent and everything to make sure that Africa remains on your mind as a viable investment destination, and we will help you clear away the perceived risk of investment onto the continent. My colleague is going to come on later and showcase to you some of the special economic zones we've developed in partnership with our strategic partner, Arise IIP, and we invite you to take a listen to that and consider bringing your investments to the continent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, panel. I think that we have done great justice to the issues at stake. We wish we had more time to entertain questions, but unfortunately, we are an hour late, aren't we? And our beautiful MC wants us to sit down so that she can do the talking. So thank you very much. And I think we'll do the picture thing. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Photographer, please take a picture of the panelists. Can we give a round of applause to panel one for a very insightful discussion as they're taking the picture? Okay. As they're taking their pictures, we turn our attention to the significant and growing collaboration between Africa and the UAE. During COP28, the UAE announced a $4.5 billion initiative focused on advancing green infrastructure, investment across Africa, and this ambitious initiative aims to tackle climate change on a broader scale by supporting projects that drive economic growth and environmental resilience across the continent. In this panel session, we will explore how we can further enhance collaboration between the UAE, Azerbaijan, and African nations. This session is called Unlocking Sustainable Growth, Fostering Integration and Innovation in the UAE-Africa Economic Corridors, and will be moderated by Mr. Walid Hareb AlFalahi, founder and CEO of the UAE Trade Center. Please join me in welcoming Mr. AlFalahi and our esteemed panelists, Ms. Helen Brume, Director of Projects and Asset-Based Finance, Afreximbank, Mr. Eugene Seah, Chief Operating Officer, Port of Baku, Mr. Yofi Grant, CEO, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, and Mr. Anar Yusufzada, Director of PPP Environment Improvement and Capacity Building Department, Small and Medium Business Development Agency of Azerbaijan Republic. Please give them a warm round of applause. Can we have our panelists on the stage, please? Okay, as you're getting snacks, please take your seats as we're starting the panel session now. Thank you very much. Please grab your seat as you've grabbed your snack so that we may continue with this insightful session. Thank you very much. You can grab a snack and then grab your seat right after you grab your snack, so we may continue the session. The snacks will be there throughout the session. We can wait for the people grabbing snacks to grab snacks now, and you can grab it 5 minutes or 10 minutes later. The snacks will remain. Thank you. Please take your seats as we continue with the next session.
Assalamu alaikum. I hope the food is good. Actually, I'm very, very thankful for. Huh? Don't worry, Yofi. I know I'm going to be in trouble inviting you for dinner today, so it's okay. But first of all, I would like just to thank Afreximbank. I know Mrs. Kineo is leaving, but thank you very much, Kineo. She's going to the airport. So I thank the Afreximbank team for their support. This is a relationship that started from COP28, and now we are going into COP29. And with progress, I think we can develop a product that can help not only sustainability, but help Africa to attract more projects. I am delighted also to share with you a very interesting news. As some of you are aware, indirectly also I represent UAE Trade Center. And if I say something now, Oluranti will look at me and will take credit, but I don't mind. As a result of COP28 and also the interaction with other African partners, we came up with a very interesting idea that is, in my opinion, it can add value to Africa. For some of you, UAE is probably in the top 3 investors in Africa. And UAE have invested in the past few years in the range of almost 60 to $70 billion all over Africa. So as a result of this interaction, we started putting things together, and we came up with an idea, just simple idea, called UAE-Africa Economic Corridor. And it's like a child when you start drawing and you get an A in school, you feel that you are the best in your... So this is exactly what we did. We put up a document to the government of UAE called UAE-Africa Economic Corridor. And out of nowhere, they loved it. And they said, okay, UAE need to organize their activities in Africa. And what we did is we divided that cooperation into 2 stages. One, the UAE side, where we are now, we started with small, sometimes I laugh when someone comes and say, we're going to invest billion here, billion here, billion here, billion. And then after that discussion, you realize how many billion this guy talked about. What we did, we took small steps in UAE. We are now starting Made in UAE exhibition in Nigeria and in Kenya. We started a gateway, UAE-Africa Gateway. We started an investment platform for UAE projects. Also, we started to support UAE company who want to go and manufacture outside the country. Even we're developing now one license for all UAE companies. I know Arise is looking what I'm saying, okay? We are developing one license that will operate in around 15 countries. I know Arise will come and talk to me after this, but that's another discussion. So what we did, we started dividing the cooperation from UAE, small kids, like a small kid who drawing. We put that UAE side, what we're going to do, one project, one budget, each organization has a budget and a KPI. In the Africa side, we are doing the same thing. For example, with you guys, we started cooperating around ATG, to develop ATG with you guys. With Africa Continental, we have 2 projects. With Africa Development Bank, we have 2 projects. Even with BADIA now, we're starting something called MAPA, Market Access Program Africa. So that's in small, it's starting small, but it's very ambitious plan that UAE is putting to enter Africa, but with one vision. How can we help Africa on a win-win situation? So from this perspective, I'm very thankful, honored to have 4 leading individuals who will share with our audience today how, basically how this corridor concept, and even not only UAE corridor, other concepts, tomorrow UK, tomorrow, how this concept of corridor, bridges, how can it contribute to Africa? I need to sit now, sorry, I apologize. How does these concepts contribute to Africa growth and development? And You know, I wanted to start with, I will come to Helen, but I will start with Yofi. Yofi, we dealt with you for a while, and we worked on few projects, and being a CEO of Ghana Investment Promotion Agency, how did you find these international cooperation, and how can these international cooperation contribute to Africa? We signed so many MOUs and all this. How can we convert these MOUs to actual projects?
Thank you very much, Walid. I think you ask a very interesting question, and interesting in many ways. Because as we look at our partnership and we think of the SDGs, which seems to be the track on which we are all proceeding now, green finance, green technologies, green industry, etc., etc. There are two of the SDGs that drive a lot of what we do now, especially between Ghana and the UAE. The first one is SDG number 1, which is poverty alleviation, poverty eradication, and SDG 17, which is partnerships for linkages and trade. And for us in Ghana, we've seen the UAE as a hub for getting our exports, particularly in the agri sector, into the GCC and into the bigger export world. The UAE has been dynamic in creating the market access through many vehicles, and today I'm told that Gulf Foods, for example, is one of the most important conferences that has African interest because it's agro-based. It's agricultural food and agricultural processing, etc., etc. So that is a channel that a lot of African agricultural produce is finding its way into the world through Gulf Foods and the GCC. But that's just not all. We've seen the UAE also look at Africa in a very constructive way. And Ghana's engagement with the UAE is to make Ghana an entry hub into the African markets using the AFCFTA. And so we have quite a significant amount of engagement with the UAE on many fronts. And as Walid said, a number of MOUs have been signed. Now is the time for us to actualize them. And as you heard from Ms. Doherty on the previous panel, they don't only just finance, they facilitate, they advise. And so we will use that vehicle to try and tie up a number of the prospects that we have. I know that there's been quite a number of investments in Ghana from the UAE, over 2 billion in real estate and infrastructure, quite a significant amount in energy and the solar space. They are also looking at other forms of infrastructure like roads, and then also into manufacturing. But quite interestingly, into agricultural production. And so, in my tenure as CEO of the GIPC, I've tried to drive a relationship that is based on mutuality. We use the UAE as a hub, and they use Ghana as a hub. And I think that is a very, very constructive engagement that we need to even facilitate much more than we have before.
Thank you very much, Yofi. Helen, how are you doing today? Helen, you know, I'm a big believer that, and I saw it through the stage that we've gone through in Dubai for manufacturing and industry. And I am always ambitious that Africa can be more of a manufacturing hub that can attract. How do you see the relationship between UAE and Africa, and how we can support in attracting industry to Africa, my sister?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So, you know, the role the UAE will play or can play in the industrialization of Africa cannot be underrated or underestimated. The UAE is currently number 1 from the Gulf Cooperation states with respect to their investments in Africa. I believe as of 2023, over $60 billion had been invested in Africa. of which 4.5 billion went into the renewable energy sector. The UAE is also home to 21,000 African companies who are doing business and are thriving in the UAE. So Africa and the UAE have multiple things in common. And I'll just like to outline a few of them. When you look at the area of port logistics, Africa has 17% of the world population, but they only control 4% of container traffic. And why is that? I mean, if you look at the condition of our ports, right, the average depth of an African port is about 15 meters. If you need the big ships to dock on African ports, you need an average depth of 21 meters. UAE has established itself as a global leader in the area of port development, port construction, and port logistics. So I believe a synergy, bringing in some of that expertise to help African ports can be one critical area where they can support Africa's industrialization. The second is in the area of food security. And I'm sure over the last couple of days, it must have come up in many conversations. Africa is home to the world's most arable land. We know that the UAE currently imports 90% of their food. So why not look to Africa? But in looking to Africa, you need to help Africa realize its potential. And this is where we would look for support in terms of technology that can boost local production of food that can be exported to the UAE. So at the end of the day, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? UAE can look to Africa as a veritable source for food, and it can also help Africa in improving their foreign exchange and their export ambitions. The third is in the area of value addition, and I like to use the term beneficiation. Africa, we know, is home to the largest resources, natural resources, mineral resources, resources that can drive the conversation around our ambitions for pursuing a path to reduced emissions and green industrialization. But we have an innate problem, right? We export the natural resources in their raw state, and then we turn around and import the finished goods. So one of the things that we've been advocating for in Afreximbank, and my colleague spoke to it earlier on, is the creation of localized capacity, value addition.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Actually, I was not planning to ask this question, but I have to be a bit naughty with you, Helen. We talk about these, we have food security. You don't need to preach me. I see Nigeria is the second largest producer of food security, of fruit and vegetable in the continent. But the percentage of waste is this. We talked about manufacturing, and we know that, but where is the plan? It's about planning. Where is it? How can we come up with that plan?
I think it would take a lot of collaboration. And let me try and address each of the problems that you raised. For example, the issue of wastage. It takes an average of maybe 10 days to get the food from where it's produced in the farm to the point of export. And that's because most of these foods are transported by roads. And if you want to use Nigeria as an example, and I can speak to that because I am from Nigeria, if you look at the condition of our roads, it's in a very poor state. I mean, we are making attempts to develop rail infrastructure, which will help in the mobility of foods. But most of the transportation now is dependent on roads. And with the poor state of our infrastructure, you find that by the time the food gets to the point of export, 50% of it is already rotten and is wasted. And I think, it's a bit of a catch-22. We need to export to get foreign exchange, And it is that same foreign exchange that we're going to use to industrialize. And when I say industrialize, what do I mean? I mean develop trade-enabling infrastructure, improve access to electricity, right? It's been said countless times that 600 people in Africa have no access to electricity, of which Nigeria, we have only achieved 40% electrification rate. So you need to improve your export development. You need to reduce your dependency on importation.
I will come to that. But so, I mean, I buy what you're saying, but all of Africa, all of outside Africa, they want to see the solution.
Yes.
You know, whether it's school stores in each state, whether it's, you know, sometimes we highlight the problem. But I think I am a believer that fixing Africa is not difficult. You know? I will come back to you later with another question, but my second, Mr. Eugene, you know, before coming, I had a very interesting discussion with your CEO. He gives you his regard. He couldn't come. He had one of the things that Port of Baku, which is very interesting, people wondering what does Port of Baku has to do with this forum. Okay, I mean, if I wasn't involved in it, I would have wondered, why do we need Port of Baku to sit with us in this forum? Port of Baku is actually starting silos for grain silos. One of the biggest challenges that we have in Africa today is grain. Because everybody knows the issue in Ukraine and Russia. So one of the things that Port of Baku is now looking at is to develop storage of silo, starting by 50 all the way to 200. So cargo from Russia or Ukraine, I don't know that one, I'm not involved in it, but the cargo will be stored in Azerbaijan and it will be shipped to Middle East and Africa. Can you do that?
The reason why we can do that is because the port of Baku is located strategically in Azerbaijan, right? And which Azerbaijan is located at the apex of the C5 countries, Central Asia countries, which provided a logistic outlet to reach the maritime Silk Road towards Africa or to the Middle East. We have in our infrastructure a fertilizer silo and capabilities to handle carbon mine. And a lot of this cargo come from either Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan. Fertilizer. You know, after the Ukraine-Russia war started, trade dynamics changed. Gas was in short supply, but gas is in plentiful supply in Central Asia. And this became the feedstock to produce fertilizer. And Azerbaijan was in a very good location where Baku is located to facilitate this kind of trade flows.
Eugene, now listen, I don't believe in talking. You have Afreximbank, you have other people. What do you need from Africans or Africa to move this project forward? And what will make it happen? I'm sorry, I have to give you the hard question.
Well, there are two things you're talking here. You're talking about grain or you're talking about fertilizer?
No, now I'm talking whatever makes money.
Okay, fine. Wherever there's a demand for it.
Grain is always demand, and fertilizer.
And if you look at Port Baku's role here, we will provide the necessary infrastructure, whether it's grain or silo, to facilitate these movements. Okay? There's also the presence of Abu Dhabi in Kurik. They have some important strategic investments, assisting the Kazakhs to provide vessels to facilitate this kind of trade. So there are a few things that UAE can assist. One is the strategic investments of key infrastructure, whether it's in ports or vessels, right? And from the African side, they have to provide us the demand so that there be some guarantees of such a demand which will justify the investments for new infrastructure to facilitate these kind of trade flows.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. My fourth speaker, as the SME, is the backbone of any country is the SME. Azerbaijan is the host country. We believe from the first visit to Azerbaijan, I got more time than Helen. I went around Baku, I seen the country. I was amazed. There's a lot of opportunity, the products, fruits, etc. How do you see Azerbaijan SME benefiting, whether it's from import or export, and how they can partner with Africa via UAE or vice versa? By the way, I changed most of the questions that they gave me, so I apologize for that. No. Always Yofi is the fixer.
Yeah. So you see, we already have cooperation.
Yes.
So basically, of course, the SMEs are the backbone of any economy. And Azerbaijan, like the government of Azerbaijan has put a lot of importance on the development of the SMEs. That's why our agency was created by the decree of the president in 2017, and starting from 2018, we started operating. So there are many mechanisms that we're using to develop SMEs. I can be giving you a brief about them, just few of them. And then later on, I will be telling you how are we promoting this trade through UAE. So basically, one of the mechanisms that we are making for SMEs is SME development centers. So we believe that capacity building is one of the main things, right? Because we know that SMEs, they can be producing very good goods, products, but they wouldn't be able to know how to make it bankable, how to expand it, how to make it scale. They wouldn't know how to market it. So that's where we come in. So we as a government, we are basically facilitators. So one of the tools, again, that we have provided for our SMEs is to establish an Azerbaijan trade house in UAE. It's in the Pearl in Dubai, where the goods from Azerbaijan are being basically displayed there. Why? Because we understand that UAE is also an important market for us.
This is through trade center.
It's not a trade center, it's trade house, yes. So if you are talking about the connection between Africa and Azerbaijan and UAE, I'll be giving you a few examples of some businessmen who have been exporting fruits, especially fruits and vegetables from Azerbaijan, but later on they found out that to export it, they were exporting it to UAE. But later on they found out that exporting from Africa to UAE makes more sense in terms of commercial value. So some of them have moved to Africa. Now they have become very rich and prosperous businessmen. So they have basically learned the experience in Azerbaijan, but now they are applying to bring the goods from Africa to UAE.
This lady, she's sitting looking at her clock, so I apologize. Helen, what I will do, sorry, I apologize, the time issue, but I will ask one question. You have 2 minutes to answer it. I'll start one by one. Helen, the Secretary General of Africa Free Continental was here, and specifically, the issue of, promoting climate adaptation and resilience in Africa. How in 2 minutes, how do you see it working? How do you see the solution, etc.?
Okay, thank you. So as we heard earlier on, the AFCFTA, if implemented correctly, would unlock about $3.4 trillion to boost the African continent. And that is monies that can be channeled towards funding our climate and adaptation aspirations. In fact, it's a veritable catalyst for green industrialization. Yes. And I'll just take it in a couple of points. When you look at shipping is the third largest emissions, followed by, ranking after China and the US. And even though Africa only accounts for 3% of global emission, shipping emissions consist of 13%. They make up 13% of that 3%. And why is that? And that's because of the absence of localized industries. So you have companies that are manufacturing raw materials here. These are being shipped one way to China, perhaps. Then the value addition is created over there, and then the finished goods are shipped here. So if we can have localized industries, that eradicates 13% of emissions, and that frees up capital that can be used to further industrialize the continent. The second is what I would call the proliferation of perceived risk, right? When you talk about attracting foreign direct investments to help us in our climate finance aspirations and agenda, there is a perceived risk, and that perception has become our reality. It costs an African corporate 3 times as much in borrowing costs compared to its counterpart in Southeast Asia or South America. Now, with the AFCFTA is implemented correctly, you would see more sustainable policies, more standardized policies and framework being adopted by the African countries. And that will go a long way to reducing perceived risk, which adds a premium on borrowing costs. And I'd just like to leave with this final note. Afreximbank has been supporting the implementation of the AFCFTA. We launched a $1 billion adjustment fund, and we have mobilized the operationalization of that fund with $10 million. And the idea is essentially because we see the value that the AFCFTA is going to play in transforming the continent. And this is a fund that we will use to catalyze further investments in the sector. And I'm going to use this as a forum to encourage investors to invest in that fund because that is clearly the future of Africa. You said I had 2 minutes. I can continue, if you...
Helen, I have, it's more than, but since yesterday I made you walk a lot, I forgive you. Eugene, very quickly, I'm not here talking about the port of Baku. I'm here talking about how Baku can play the similar role. They call Baku another Dubai, in attracting investment, finance, from the region, etc. And the vision of offshore finance, etc. Is that something within the horizon?
Well, if you look at Africa, and you look at China, and you look at Azerbaijan, where we are, we're in the center, and part of the middle corridor. In the middle corridor, you should see it as important alternative corridor to the world markets, to the source of supply of raw materials, critical raw materials, which are required, for example, in China. Earlier on in the last panel, you heard 19% of platinum is found in Africa. And platinum, you need it in hydrogen fuel cells. If hydrogen is going to be in the future for cars, and if China's next phase is to develop hydrogen fuel cells, the critical supply routes and the shortest will be through the middle corridor. Where Baku can play a role is to build, facilitate this trade, as well, maybe provide incentives in the free economic zones to provide the intermediate products for the manufacturing of such automobiles in the free trade zone next to the port of Baku.
Thank you thank you very much. Yofi, you know, I mean, if you look at Yofi, and he does this, I think most of the gold in Ghana is in his hand, you know? And I remember we talked with Yofi on, you know, usually people talk about liquidity, lack of dollar. I mean, everybody knows that from one country in Africa to, you know, if you go from Ghana to Nigeria, you have to use dollars and you have to acquire dollars. But I remember Ghana, they started a very interesting, ambitious project where they did gold for fuel. Can you just tell us how did that thing work?
Well, it's a very simple concept that instead of trying to accumulate dollars to buy the oil, and of course...
Actually, this is very interesting. This is a deal that happened between a UAE company
and a Ghanaian company.
A Ghanaian company.
If you have to... The power of the dollar is because you have to buy or sell gold in dollar, or you have to buy and sell oil in dollar. If you didn't have to, the dollar would not be as powerful as it is. So to eliminate that whole construct, the central bank buys the gold from the gold miners in cedis, the Ghanaian currency, and then has struck this transaction where they pay for the oil with gold, eliminating the dollar equation. And so that has worked very well. What has happened is that then our oil imports have been cheaper because we are buying with a product that is obtained from Ghana. And I think it's these innovative solutions that will help the African continent. The second one, which is, of course, very important, is what today we call the Pan-African Payment Platform, initiated by Afrexim and supported by the central banks in Africa and the AFCFTA, which creates a mechanism where you can buy local, export, and paid for in the local currency of the importer, eliminating the third party of the dollar. Because right now, if you have to import or export into Africa, you first have to convert it to dollars to pay, although it's within Africa. So if I have to buy something from Nigeria, I'll buy it in cedis, and then when they have to pay, they will have to convert their naira into dollars to pay me. But this eliminates the dollar transaction out of the whole thing by creating an electronic platform where I buy in cedis, they pay me in naira, and I get my money back in cedis.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anar, one of the things I seen all over Africa, a lot of the SME, MSME and SME, they are very, agile. They most of the time developing small businesses, developing this. And what we developed in UAE is more of an e-commerce platform where we attract these people from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, give them the infrastructure for them to buy, develop the proper shipping, and even we hedged logistics to support these SME, because $200, $300 that they make on that product, today we ship from Dubai to Kenya, $7 a kg, door-to-door custom duty, which is what we did is we hedged logistics. When I came, I went to your markets. Also, I saw the same thing. People are going to markets and buying product. Don't you think tools like e-commerce, tools like improvement of shipping can help your SME to grow them, put more opportunity for them, because they need opportunities? How do you see this between Azerbaijan, UAE, and Africa? Because there is some product that you have. I went to the market. There is one product here. I will tell everybody, go to the market here. There is a product that they ship from here to Japan and China. And these two markets are the most difficult market to enter fruits and vegetables. The quality here is beyond norm. So I want to hear, as a last question, how do you get the technology to help your SMEs?
Of course, we agree, because now online platforms, they allow us to go beyond borders. And we as an agency, we have already actually established another portal for our SMEs. It is called KOB Market. KOB stands for SME in Azerbaijani. And what we are also doing now, first of all, we are trying to gather them under our umbrella, because it becomes free for them. I mean, we are providing this services because, for the online platform, they need to pay some entrance fees and everything. And now we're in discussion with other platforms to make the goods that appear on our platform to be placed there. So basically, we pay for our SMEs to be marketed through Amazon, eBay.
I think Alibaba exists here also.
Alibaba, of course, is very popular in Azerbaijan. We're buying a lot of Chinese goods through Alibaba. I personally am a user. And of course, I'm using Amazon AE. I mean, we are buying things via Dubai. And of course, we're also using some regional platforms. Like we have very big platform from Turkey. You know that it is also present here. It's Trendyol. Now they're also in Azerbaijan. So basically now Azerbaijani SMEs are also able to sell through that platform. And there are two other Russian platforms, Wildberries and Ozon, that we are also discussing with, that our SMEs will be able to sell through them. So basically we are not limiting them. We are not trying to build our own platform. So basically we are trying to facilitate for our SMEs. Yeah, I know. She's the boss. So that's, basically.
Thank you, Anar. I think I would like to thank everybody. Forgive me if I, go on different questions, because I feel that we need to relate to the audience. We need to make them feel that they are part of that discussion. And I really thank you for giving me the opportunity. And inshallah, through this platform and the corridor we're doing, I see good opportunity for partnership as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As they're taking the photo, let's give them a round of applause for a great session, a great panel. It was quite insightful. And in the spirit of more action, less talk, we want to have the last portion of our program here today, which is a showcase that focuses on green economic zones and investment opportunities within the SEZs.